Scott did not even hang up the receiver between phone calls, just depressed the button long enough to break the connection with Mike at the office, then frantically dialed Dory's home number. Snatches of his conversation with Mike drifted through his mind as he listened to her phone ring. Probably nothing. Sounded a bit distracted, coming down with something. Tough you had went to know she called. Guts constricting, he gave up after a dozen rings. Where are you, Dory? At the hospital? For a long time he sat at his desk, tapping the tips of his stippled index fingers against pursed lips as he fretted, oblivious to the hurrying and scurrying of the students beyond the closed office door. Dory, please be out shopping, picking up your cleaning, buying pantyhose, anywhere but at the hospital. After the last class of the day, the campus hunkered down to sleep like a tired giant, steeling itself for the boisterousness of the next class day. The noise of students dwindled to an occasional footfall or hushed exchange in the hallway. Scott paid the silence no more notice than he had the earlier confusion. Probably nothing, not feeling well. Yet Mike had been concerned enough to call Scott and tell him about the call. Probably nothing, yet something in Dory's manner, her tone of voice, had triggered Mike's concern. Scott knew Dory too well, knew how private she was, knew she would not have told Mike if something was terribly wrong, but she had called his CPA office on Thursday afternoon. Even tough, she knew he would be at the college. Dory did not make mistakes like that. Scott dropped a hand to the phone, closed his fingers around the receiver, then realizing the futility of it, released it. It was too soon to try again. He had waited a while, then radio. The idleness of waiting left him vulnerable to an onslaught of memories he had long kept stored in the back of his mind, unpleasant memories that disturbed him, even now because of the emotions they brought back to him so vividly. He was 9, older and ever so much wiser than he had been at 7 when he overheard an aunt talking to his mother. Baby, Bet, have you lost your ever-loving mind? Her voice, raised in disbelief, drew his attention. Scott lost track of Gilligan's Island at this bizarre turn in their conversation. He dared not turn away from the television for fear of betraying his eager interest in what they were saying at the dining room table, but he listened with the intensity of a desperate child. If what his aunt was saying was true, it meant his mother was pregnant. He knew that word now, it and all its insidious implications and complications and ramifications. His mother pregnant. It was unthinkable, unforgivable, an unfathomable betrayal that made her recent marriage pale insignificance. Holding his breath, Scott waited for his mother to refute what his aunt had just said, to correct the mistake, to take away the knot of nausea the news had tied in his young guts. His mother said, I have not lost my mind, Cynthia. I am playing it smart this time. But you know how much trouble you had carrying Scott Jr. You know what the doctor said. Yes, so I did not have any other babies, and look what happened. Scott Sr. left me. Scott was fooling around with his secretary and got caught. Bet he was chasing a skirt, plain and simple. It had nothing to do with your not having more children. Scott's mother harangued. That bitch has been dropping babies like a broodmare, and Scott loves it. Well, I have got second chance at a marriage with Mel, and I'm not repeating the mistake I made with Scott. Mel wants children. If he wants children at the risk of your health, then he is not much of a man. You don't know him. I'm not sure you do either, but you met him, what, 3 months ago? I think you are wearing blinders where he is concerned. You were desperate for a man and he came along. You don't know what it is like being alone, Cynthia. You have never had a husband run off on you. Look, if you love this man and he loves you, then that should be enough. But Scott, that is it, isn't it? You are still trying to compete with Scott's new wife. Can't you see how futile that is? She is 10 years younger than you are, and she doesn't have the female problems you have. You are not going to prove anything but your own stupidity if you try to have a baby. If you try. Scott breathed a little easier. That must mean she was not pregnant yet. This discussion might be academic at this point, his mother said. A fresh onslaught of goosebumps crawled up Scott's spine. He did not know what academic meant, but it did not sound good. Lord, Beth, please don't tell me that, his aunt said, confirming his worst fears. I'm late. Late for what, Scott Taft? Well, God help you, Aunt Cynthia said. It was the beginning of a new phase of the nightmare. Frantic, Scott tried to push away the memory of his mother's long and troubled pregnancy and dialed Dory's number again. When there was no answer, he decided to go somewhere for dinner. Food might ease the gnawing pain in his gut, and it would not hurt to have a solid meal under his belt, just in case he had to make an unscheduled trip to Tallahassee. The phone roused Dory from deep sleep. She reached over the arm of the sofa for the phone on the end table, sending the books in her lap tumbling to the floor. "Oh," she said groggily. "Dory?" The urgency in his voice was alarming. "Scott," she asked back. "Dory, are you all right?" Oh, sure, I was reading and I must have dozed off. I have been trying to get you for hours. Mike said you had found the office? Good old Mike. I forgot it was Thursday. He said you thought you might be coming down with something. I'm just a little tired. The doctor says it's normal, but I did not want to go into it with Mike. A pause. Well, I'm glad it's not the flu or anything. Say something about the baby, Dory Taft. Tell me you are glad it was not a problem with the baby. Tell me you were not hoping. You are still coming this weekend, are you not? So they could both talk around the fact that she was carrying a child, so she could vent her rage at her doctor's attitude and watch Scott not react. Scott, I could really use some extra rest. The slugfest over the Barton estate really took its toll. Dory found the total silence with which she was answered unsettling. She said awkwardly, "It's still a critical time, Scott, and the drive." More silence. "Please say something," she pleaded. "I miss you, Dory." Another prolonged silence stretched to rough the line before he asked, "Do you want me to come there?" "If only you could come and we would talk about the baby. Our baby. The baby I'm getting to now. The one my body's already accommodating. If we could talk, if we could plan together, if I could tell you what the doctor said and be sure you had be as outraged as I was. Maybe that would not be such a good idea," she said. Fear swelled inside Scott. a different fear from the one that had made him frantic to get in touch with her, but no less urgent and certainly no less intimidating. He was losing Dory, and they were losing to awkwardness, that special closeness they had always enjoyed with each other. Pregnant, and now she was not coming to see him, did not want him going to see her. God, but it hurt. It was a physical pain tearing at him. This regret, this witching nothing had changed, this wondering why it had to happen. It's probably better this way, she said softly. I really do need some rest, with the holiday coming up, and I think you need a little more time and space. I need you, Dory. Dory closed her eyes. Tell me that you want our baby. Tell me that you need it, too, because it's a part of us. Oh, Scott, she said, fighting back the uncharacteristic tears that were always so close to the surface now. I need you too, but... Listen to us, Dory. This is not the way it's supposed to be with us. That's why, she said it too quickly, then sighed wearily. The truth is, I want to talk about the baby, and I don't think you are ready to. And I don't have the stamina to spend the whole weekend pretending it does not matter. God, Dolly, do you know how good it feels when you level with me like that, like some giant wave of relief? You are not angry then, about this weekend? Disappointed, not angry. And not ready to talk, Dory thought. In his own way, Scott had leveled with her, and she, too, felt relief mingling with disappointment. Are you still going to your mother's for Thanksgiving? She asked. I have to duty. I was hoping. She took a breath. I have been thinking while the family is all together that it might be a good time to tell them. I thought maybe you might want to be there. I don't know what to say, Dory. It's your family. And my baby, she thought bitterly. Mine, not ours. You will have to decide how and when to tell them. Scott went on. If you want to wait until the next time I'm in Tallahassee, then we can tell them together. I will give it some thought, Dory, Scott. They laughed self-consciously, mirthlessly. We are doing it again, Dory said, acting like strangers. Silly is not, isn't it? Yes, oh Scott, I wish we could be together and just hold each other and not have to talk at all. Could not we? I don't think so. You are probably right. We will be together weekend after next. Another 2 weeks will seem like an eternity. 2 weeks always seems like an eternity. That's why we don't talk about it. Rule number 1 of a long-distance relationship, remember? Damn the rules, Dory. His irritability earned a chuckle from her. Mike said you were getting lonely. You really do get grouchy when you have been away from me a while, don't you? Irritability is a perfectly normal male response to sexual deprivation. For that, you get a little something extra next time we are alone together, Dory purred. That 2 weeks is getting longer all the time. For what? It's worth even tough. We are not supposed to talk about it. You are not the only man who is lonely in that respect. Then why, Dory? The only answer to why is because it would just be impossible right now. We had both be hearing what we were not saying. I don't have to agree with you, do I? No, please. Argue with me, her mind pleaded. Tell me you are ready to talk about the baby, but he had already admitted he was not. It is going to be a long weekend, he predicted sadly. Dory regretted her decision to cancel her trip to Gainesville almost before the receiver was back in place. The weekend had not even started, and it was already too long. It yawned ahead of her like a sentence in solitary confinement. How could she deliberately have denied herself Scott's company when she needed him so desperately? Surely the subject with Scott would not be as awful as tackling it without him. She coped by focusing on herself and the baby, sleeping, relaxing, reading, carrying on a one-sided conversation with the life within her. She missed Scott, longed for him in all the small, significant ways a woman yearns for the man she loves, for his touch, his understanding, his wit, for the special sharing of two people who love and respect each other. In the period of self-imposed exile from him, a weekend she ordinarily would have spent with Scott, a weekend she spent instead alone with the child forming in her womb. She faced the harsh reality of the changing timbre of her life. Scott always had played an episodic role in her life. He came to her like intermittent rays of sunshine stabbing through swaying tree branches, bursting with passion and romance. Their relationship to date had hinged on freedom, freedom to function within their separate lives, independent of each other, freedom to merge separate lives at set intervals, knowing they could let go when it was time to let go. A baby would curtail the freedoms upon which their relationship had been based, while the quality of their love was not in jeopardy. The structure of their relationship was, no matter how they clung to the feelings they had for each other, the relationship might not be able to withstand the strain of distance without the freedom to move in and out of each other's lives without having to answer to anyone else. Her heart constricted at the thought that no matter how much they cared, they might drift apart. If it would be a gradual parting, a slow goodbye, like a lingering death by degenerative disease. Again she found she was pressing her hand over her womb, unconsciously protecting the teeny life within her. Oh, Scott, can't you see it is eventually going to be all or nothing? Why are you making me choose? Her frustration, her recognition of inevitable disaster came to a head on Saturday afternoon when a local florist delivered a dozen red roses to her door. Dory looked at the blood-red blossoms, smelled their pungent fragrance as she read the florist's card. Across the top was the imprinted message, "Hope you are feeling better soon." The signature, written by a stranger's hand, said simply, "Scott." Dory felt her heart breaking into pieces as she set the vase of flowers on the table, crossing her hands over her chest, gathering handfuls of her knit shirt in her fist because she had nothing else to hold on to. She surrendered to sobs that began with a low wail from deep in her throat and then grew into spasms that shuddered throughout her entire body. When she had worn herself out, she started at the roses. Why could not they have been diseases, or balloons, or peppermint carnations, anything but blood-red roses? Scott had buffed her teddy bears and sexy teddies, crazy mugs, cards that made her blush when she read them. He had brought her a wooden pet slug refrigerator magnet from Seattle. He had bought her saltwater toffee and cotton candy and corn dogs and prime rib. He had bought her bouquets of mixed flowers at supermarkets and potted plants at Kmart, but he had never sent her a dozen red roses. Red roses, so formal, so predictable, so cliché, so uncharacteristic of their relationship, so contrary to the way they usually communicated. She looked at the bouquet and thought Red roses. Oh, Scott, is this what we have come to? How did we ever get from pet slugs for the refrigerator to blood red roses?